Hello indie game fans, a pixel art Metroidvania, two awesome looking RPGs, a narrative adventure game where you are dead, the next game from Mike Bethel and more coming up in indie gaming this week. We begin with the oft-delayed Biomass, a pixel art Souls-like Metroidvania, so yes, yes and yes. If you know me, you will know that this game on the surface is totally my jam, with there being laser swords and guns to utilize in this sinking city. I've showcased this a number of times, but it kept getting delayed, so hopefully this time will be the charm. A number of gorgeous pixel art pieces have been added to the store page, so given that it is my favourite genre and art style, I have high hopes for this. A wonderful tycoon game that I enjoyed in early access is Overcrowd: A Commuter Map, which launches in 1.0, looking to be a more polished version with even more content. This has you building subway stations of all things, very reminiscent of the Tube in London, but if you live in any major metropolitan city, these stations will be familiar to you. I had a very good time with this when I last checked in, with complex management systems, and the one that I remember about this is that you're able to designate the flow of passenger traffic, having to optimize that so that people move smoothly and get on the trains. All the necessary management overlays are present, so if you're sick of building cities or zoos, this will be a nice change of pace.
Hello there, I'm Boris Lupton. I was the curator of this museum on the beautiful island of Shelmiston. And let's get this out of the way right now, I am dead. But it's not a big deal.
I believe that I Am Dead premiered during one of those digital events back in summer, and I was immediately drawn to it, where you play as the ghost of the museum curator, who must now use his ghostly powers to prevent disaster from befalling his beloved island. You can literally look inside people and objects to reveal their memories and contents, so how's that for an alternative spooky game this October? It's also from the developer of Wilmot's Warehouse and Hohokum, and has some of that same charm from the voice acting and art style.
For the toast! Oh, the fish folk love toast.
Come on, Morris. Let's go visit the lighthouse.
Ah, this is where my old pal Pete Noach lived. He used to run a yoga retreat here, which is now run by a robot, of all things. Ah, here's Pete's grapefruit tree. Oh, it's lovely inside this, isn't it?
Morris, we need to find the ghosts. Otherwise the volcano will destroy the island.
Sparky, I didn't want to worry them about the volcano. If we keep looking inside these lovely objects, we'll find the ghosts and save Shelmiston.
For bigger games this week, I want to give a special mention to Baldur's Gate 3, coming to us from Larian Studios, who made the excellent Divinity Original Sin 2, and there's no better studio to carry on that CRPG legacy. The last entry for Baldur's Gate was in 2000, not counting remasters, so 20 years in the making, which is just insane. I'm sure that the developers at Larian are huge CRPG fans, so this looks very promising, although it is releasing in early access. And of course, special mention has to go out to Fall Guys Season 2. The beans that took over the world have been slightly overshadowed by Among Us in recent weeks, and Season 2 should give it a little bit of a boost. I see more medieval themed costumes and levels, and should be just more wacky fun. Back to indie games with The Solitaire Conspiracy from Bethel Games. This was surprisingly announced just a couple of weeks ago and is already launching, and seems to be the trend with this developer, with their previous titles like Subsurface and Quarantine Circular.
Have you ever seen a spy movie?
It's a standard +-1 solitaire rules, but has a wicked cool aesthetic and is set in a cyberpunk world of espionage. Fair warning to new or unknown developers though, do not surprise launch your game since it takes some time to gather momentum, but as always, I'm curious about the next project from this developer.
What is it like to be loved and so adored?
Mention Iconfell in my rundown of best indie games this month, so this Magical School tactical RPG does have my attention. The idea of having to learn magic of all things just seems awesome as compared to math or languages, which probably explains the popularity of this setting among a lot of people. So to see it in video game form is encouraging. You will be able to explore the twisted halls of a vast magical school, fighting 100 plus different types of enemies and 22 challenging bosses.
If I win, then what does that mean?
Combat does have an active timing element to it, on top of grid-based tactics combat, which is an intriguing mix, and with 48 spells to mix and match, it should be a very solid combat system. As a commenter mentioned, the soundtrack of this game is being made by the people who worked on Steven Universe, and I'm expecting it to be excellent with a wonderful pixel art style to round off the package. I have caught glimpses of Adventures of Chris from time to time while looking at Metroidvania games, and while I'm not a fan of the hand-drawn art here, it does look pretty insane and gives me some vibes similar to the very underrated Super Darrow Deluxe. Chris can inflate, bounce, float, and even shoot lightning from his hands, so a very weird but interesting game. Smaller games this week begins with the flight sim Eerie Sky Castle. I haven't really been paying attention, but there seems to be a number of games that use this exact motif about flying through hoops as a bird. As with most games in the genre, the sensation and freedom of flight must feel great, which, combined with the beautiful low-poly landscape, makes this worth a play. Horror games and point-and-click games don't usually go together, but here we are with Almost My Floor Prologue. Play as Alex, who appears to have found himself in a horror movie with monsters and gore after taking an elevator on the way home. Love the art style, so given that it's a free demo, why not give this a try for October? The previously PlayStation exclusive Falcon Age launches on Steam, Switch and PC VR, having you play as a falconer who is going on an adventure to fight against automated colonizers. Very cool mix of aesthetics and ideas, and one to check out. I enjoyed the puzzle game Filament back at launch in April, where it is about wrapping said filaments around poles, and is a puzzle game that solely focuses on that. Console players rejoice since you get to play too, but certainly one for puzzle game fans. Always down for a good action puzzle game, and Flip-On looks to fill that spot quite nicely this week. It is a match 3 puzzle game where you swap tiles, so nothing too innovative, but a good look and hopefully varied enough powers should make this worth a look. Ghost of a Tale charmed with its presentation back in 2018, where you play as a minstrel mouse trying to survive in a world of rats. There are semi-stealth sequences mixed in with the action, and simply looks gorgeous visually, and launches on Switch this week. One more port of a great game with Ministry of Broadcast, a cinematic platformer where you play as a contestant on a game show in a totalitarian regime. This genre never really spoke to me, but somehow this game managed to slip through despite having that elongated pixel art style. Interesting puzzles and some really dark humor, it's an interesting curiosity for sure. I really like the look of Neon Fusion, a very simple but clean looking pixel art action platformer that reminds me a little bit of the Blue Bomber, especially with the boss fights. 1v1 lane defense games were a staple of Flash Games websites, but Primordials of Emryon polishes up the visuals and brings it to PC. Not sure what kind of player population this would have, but kudos on trying. I'm a fan of the pixel art of developer Orange Pixel, with Space Grunts from 2016 launching on Switch this week. This is a turn-based tactics game where you play as the eponymous Space Grunts who must investigate and destroy alien threats.
It was a normal Halloween for Ada and her friends. That was until they decided to stop by the old Aitken house, and their night of fun turned into a night of terror. Trapped inside the mansion, your friends taken by an evil force lurking in the shadows, ready to strike.
One more demo of another spooky game for October with Sunshine Manor Prologue. This is a horror game where you collect items and solve puzzles while avoiding the spooky ghoulies as best you can. Another Flash game legend relaunches on Steam with Swords and Sandals Crusader Redux, the remastered version of a game from 2007. This is a strategy game where you command a large number of troops and can also summon titans in battle, with an epic campaign and new modes like tournament, mini-adventures, and survival. The developer of The Viking Way did reach out to me, so here it is even without a trailer. This is a Viking sim title where you manage your tribe and longship, but can also directly participate in third-person melee combat and even action-packed naval battles. Seems promising, but there's another early access release. The first-person puzzle game, Zoff, will be of interest to people who like Myst, the Talos Principle, and more, since it is similar, having you exploring and pulling levers and switches to get from one area to the next, with a decent visual art style that works for this genre. Back to the top 10 indie games of the week, with Ninth Dawn 3 Shadows of Earthil, the third entry from a franchise that began way back in 2012. I'm surprised that I have not heard of this series before, but it appears to be a real-time open-world action RPG that just looks awesome. People have been asking for Diablo but open world, and I have yet to come across a great one, but this does look like it has potential. Insane Chronicron levels of action, monsters that you can capture, crafting, a fishing minigame, and even a built-in card game shows that this developer has gone the extra mile, so very hyped for this. Darkstone the Lightseeker is a roguelite deck builder RPG that does look very much like Darkest Dungeon, with 4v4 combat and how the action plays out, although admittedly, that art style isn't as good, but Darkest Dungeon is hard to beat. From the trailer, it does look like it is based more on party composition and combo abilities rather than straight up RPG combat, so perhaps something a little different.
We live in worrying times. Our nation is facing tough challenges ahead. Income inequality, automation, climate change. How can we meet these challenges? Everyone has a different view on how to solve our problems. Capitalists want tax cuts to boost business investment. Socialists want us to tax the rich to pay for healthcare, education, or a universal income.
The Democracy series has been a mainstay in indie strategy games, and the fourth entry is perhaps as timely as ever. A politics simulation where you play as president or prime minister, govern and pass laws to change a country while trying to remain electable and doing what you can to retain power. As tricky a subject to tackle as politics is in games, this developer does go out of the way to state that they have tried to be without bias and encourages you to try whatever form of government policy, whether it be abolishing all taxes or to implement universal basic income. Of course, there might be some inherent bias in how the game was programmed as to how effective any of these policies are, but it certainly is an interesting strategy sandbox to check out.
And even if we do manage to get the most votes in the next election, will we have an outright majority, or be forced to govern in coalition, compromising our beliefs in order to cling on to power? Running the country is tougher than ever, but at least this is still a democracy.
Coming in at number 1 is The Survivalist, a sandbox survival game where you try to do so on a tropical island. Watch out for monsters and mythical beings, but perhaps train an army of monkeys to aid you along the way. This supports multiplayer for up to 4 players, with a massive crafting system and settlement building elements. Love the look of this, and it looks very well put together, taking the number 1 spot. To see more of the big picture, check out these awesome videos, and I will see you after the jump.